I kind of chatted to a few of you, Crunch is, I think, at the beginning of its Kotlin journey, although we've kind of been going at it for, just under a year maybe. And it's kind of interesting to see just like what everybody else is doing down here and locally. That's kind of the whole point of us putting this meetup together. So we can get an idea of what everyone else is doing and maybe get some ideas, best practice and things like that. So before I kick off though, there's the usual stuff. Some of you have seen the male toilets just outside on this floor. Unfortunately, the female ones are downstairs, so give us a shout if you need to go out, because we need to open the doors for you. If there's a fire exit just the other side of this room here. Follow me, one of us. I'll be the first out. And I guess the usual spiel, Crunch did sponsor tonight. They provided the venue and the beers and everything else. So they get the first shout out. Crunch are hiring at the moment, but it's mainly front-end devs. We do like a load of React on the front end, but if you are looking for work, then they're happy to kind of see CVs and things like that. So, if you just get out of your degree, then send a CV to careers@crunch.co.uk and somebody will definitely pick it up. So, the next meeting is planned for November, back end of November. That'll be somewhere more central Brighton, I think. I think we'll move it out of here and do some different venues. So, like I say, we've been doing this kind of thing for just under a year, give or take. And it's mainly backend that we've been working on. So, Crunch have, give or take, around 40, just over 40 Java microservices, Spring Boot, that kind of thing. In fact, Crunch have like two different worlds. They have their core account CAT, which is like an older monolithic thing, which releases every couple of weeks, something like that. And then we've got our continuous integration, continuous delivery, microservice world, which has React front end and all that kind of stuff. So we're pretty ingrained into the whole Java ecosystem. So Kotlin was, like, from a dev perspective, a welcome change, not always from a senior management perspective, but I guess kind of go into that. So what I wanted to do today was just kind of go over our journey and kind of what we've found, and maybe at the end have a chat, see what you guys get up to, what kind of things you're interested in hearing about, and maybe we can organise some of that for future meetups. So we work in an agile way, so all of our sprints are 2 weeks, and every sprint each developer has like a sprint gap day or a development day or whatever you want to call it, where we're allowed to kind of work on whatever it is we want, learn new stuff, and things like that. And this is kind of how Kotlin started as far as Crunch is concerned. Some of the backend devs decided that they wanted to learn something new. Mostly they were looking at it from a mobile perspective, but we quickly moved onto the backend side of things. So there was a number of reasons why we wanted to kind of make the move. Well, not the move, but we wanted to take a look at what Kotlin could give us in terms of our day-to-day development environment. Now, I don't know how many of you are kind of Java people here, but I guess Java has a bit of a reputation for being more of a heavyweight kind of language. There's a lot of talk about boilerplate and all those kind of things, and we see that on a day-to-day basis, especially on our microservices that are very like DTO heavy, that kind of pass a lot of data around, things like that. We see a lot of boilerplate code, so it has knock-on impacts to our development team. Bigger pull requests take longer to review, those kind of things. More testing, and so on and so forth. The list goes on. So when we started looking at Kotlin, we wanted to kind of make every line of code count. Kotlin obviously has a lot of benefits over kind of just plain Java. Kind of null safeties, checked exceptions, data classes, and extension functions and things like that. And those are the kind of things that we were really looking to kind of maximise on when we started dabbling in Kotlin. So we wrote Coolness here because it's a little bit cheesy, but we wanted to find something that also kept our backend devs kind of engaged in their craft, so to speak. So we come to work every day, we write a lot of code on a day-to-day basis, and it's nice to have your interest piqued about something new and want to play with something. And that's kind of one aspect as to why Kotlin works really well. The kind of coolness factor of it. Although Kotlin isn't new, I guess it's been around like since 2010-ish. For us it's pretty new, and we want to keep our backend devs, any devs for that matter, but our backend devs engaged. Our source code is like a living document, not only providing value to our end clients, but also we want our devs to be proud of what they do. And kind of Kotlin gave us that little bit of injection of kind of curiosity and being proud of what we do. So there's a few criteria, I guess, at Crunch for anything making it into our developer ecosystem, let alone Kotlin. We're currently going through some pretty major rebuilds of our accounting software, and our teams are pretty much maxed out at the moment in terms of building new functionality, replacing bits of old infrastructure and code and things like that. So anything that kind of stopped them dead in their tracks was never going to work, and Kotlin works really well in that perspective. Obviously, Kotlin being built by JetBrains is a massive bonus. I think we've got an engineering department of like 30 odd people. Out of all of the backend devs, I think there's only one that uses Eclipse. All the rest are IntelliJ. So, Kotlin was a bit of a no-brainer for them, really. The interoperability didn't stop there, though. I guess we needed to make sure that Kotlin integrated with our build pipelines and our continuous integration and things like that. We really needed to make sure that nothing got in the way of Kotlin making it out into production. And there was no challenges at all, really. We migrated all of our microservices at the beginning of the year to Java 12, so it just worked, and that was a massive bonus for like a tick in the box as far as kind of Kotlin was concerned. The other part to it was the community side to it. We weren't sure kind of what was going on locally down here. I mean, this is the first step of us kind of dipping our toe in the water and kind of maybe putting something together that like brings people together who do Kotlin on a day-to-day basis. Because we're not there yet, really. We write more Java code on a day-to-day basis than we do Kotlin. It's still kind of like at that kind of ratio. But looking around, there was like meetups up in London, and that's all right. But London's a bit of a trek after work, so we thought there's got to be like a group of people locally who are interested in this stuff, who might want to hear more about Kotlin and different things. So tonight was a good kind of test bed, really. We were kind of wondering whether it would just be like 4 Crunch devs sat in a room with like surrounded by pizza and beer, or whether there'd be people who thought it might be interesting enough to come along. So I think there's a really good community, and JetBrains themselves are really good at supporting things like this. I mean, they normally support meetups that have they're a bit more well established, and that have maybe more average people who go to them. an averagely higher amount of people who go to them. But you know, when I reached out to them, they were pretty cool. They sent like a load of IntelliJ licenses to raffle off and things like that, stickers, t-shirts, and the whole lot. So they're pretty cool. It's a pretty good community. So we needed to find a way how to kind of start the ball rolling, really. And there was a number of ways we could do that. We were going to build an entire backend service in Kotlin, or we could kind of sneak it in under the radar. And largely, to start off with, we kind of snuck it in under the radar, to be honest with you. One of the massive benefits that we found was that Kotlin enabled us to pick the best bits and implement it in our services and leave the rest. We didn't need to worry about it. We could have a service that is half Java, half Kotlin, and that works really well. We were able to kind of like integrate it into our build pipelines really quickly, and we focused mainly on like data classes and things like that, so we could really reduce down kind of lines of code and things like that. So after we'd started building this into a few of our kind of services under the radar, we then thought, well, maybe there's an opportunity to just build our, an entire service in Kotlin. But we needed to be careful because, as I'll mention later on there, culturally and from a kind of senior management perspective, it wasn't as smooth as it was from a technical perspective. All the devs were really on board. It was really easy to integrate into our whole ecosystem. But we tried to promote an ecosystem where the dev teams can, pick and choose what it is they want to build in, really, so long as they support what they build. That's kind of the ethos that we try to kind of instill, rather than kind of build something and then throw it over to the DevOps guys and that's it. So long as we support what we build, then we should have freedom of choice. So we took a few, I guess what we class as non-essential services, and completely rewrote them in Kotlin. And the idea behind that was to give the dev teams something that they could use as a reference point more than anything else, just as a kind of get things off the ground, get things started. So we've got, I think, like 44 microservices. About 10% of those are now all in Kotlin. About 30% of those are a mix of Java and Kotlin. So we've got a few microservices now that are good enough as reference points. So it works pretty well. We use Maven for once of, I don't know how many kind of Gradle fans there are, but we we still use Maven. So our approach to kind of introducing Kotlin into our code bases was pretty simple, to be honest with you. We kind of highlighted the classes and the bits of code that we think we would get the biggest bang for our buck, and then we just go through a simple kind of IntelliJ convert to Kotlin type thing. So long as we had like good test coverage, then we could be pretty certain that whatever the end result of that was still functionally correct. And once we'd done the convert, then we'd kind of apply most of the IntelliJ refactorings and things like that. And then we'd repeat for the tests. We had a look around, I think, and again, backend earlier this year when we migrated all of our services to Java 12, we also went from JUnit 4 to JUnit Jupyter. And we kind of keep those pretty up to date on a regular basis. We decided to take a look around. I think we've migrated, we still use JUnit across the board, but we migrated to Strict. I don't know if any of you guys use that. Strict is like a fluent assertion library, a bit like AssertJ. So most of our Java services are JUnit 5 and AssertJ. Strict is, it was written by a guy called Rob Fletcher from Netflix. And that works pretty well. It's a similar kind of thing. It's a fluent assertion library but it works very well with Kotlin. I think we migrated to Mock-K as well. So again, always interested to hear what you guys use. We're by no means set on any of those things. It'd be good to get an idea of what people who have been doing this for a long time use, or whether there's something different on mobile or not. But all of our services use, I don't know how many of you are Spring developers or anything like that, but Spring have what they call starter POMs, and you can include them in your Maven POMs, and they bring in the dependencies that you need. So at Crunch, we built our own starter POMs. They bring in all the testing, whether we're using Redis or anything like that, and we built our own ones for Kotlin. So the barriers to getting off the ground for our backend devs was kind of pretty small. So there was nothing really stopping them from kind of diving in. Like I say, testing, pretty much gone over that. JUnit 5, and we moved to more Kotlin specific libraries. We do also throw some Python in, just for good measure. So when our services are deployed, we have our black box tests which run in Python. They just stayed the same. We didn't bother touching those. They work pretty well from a kind of black box perspective. So from a tech perspective, I think it's fair to say that there was really no challenges at all. Everything worked really well. We had the IDE support, we had the interoperability throughout our whole build pipeline. I think for our most kind of tight microservices, we saw like a 10% reduction in lines of code. Maybe our more kind of flabby microservices is more kind of 20-odd%, and the services that we have, which are pretty big, pass a lot of data around, very DTO heavy, we could see anywhere up to kind of 40% lines of code reduction. So for us, that's a massive win. It reduces down the PR size, it reduces the amount of testing we have to do, and it just reduces down the sheer amount of code that we have to manage on a day-to-day basis. So for us, that was a massive win. So technically, there was no real issues at all. I think the only challenges that we came across were mainly cultural. I think it's fair to say that not all of our devs were on board. Some are very much a case of, I'm a Java dev, why would I want to do anything else? And there was a little bit of pushback from more senior leadership team, not because they had anything specific against Kotlin, but largely because we were introducing something new. And I guess anything new into an ecosystem that works reasonably well has an element of risk associated to it. So that was the kind of hardest part, really. It was trying to prove that Kotlin wasn't going to introduce extra workload, it wasn't going to introduce additional risk. I think that the biggest concern that our senior leadership team had was cover. I guess the last thing you want for any of your dev team is for them to be looking at Kotlin for the very first time at 5 o'clock on a Friday when you've got an entire production outage or something like that. So I think that was the biggest challenge for us. It was more along the lines of how do we make sure that we bring our dev team along for the ride and that we can provide adequate support for all of our services in production. Like I say, at the moment, we've only really got our kind of non-essential services, things that provide links to help articles and things like that. If they go down, then it's not a huge mad panic to get them up. If nobody can log into our app, then that's a much bigger problem and we need to deal with that straight away. Although it's fair to say that we've got some Kotlin in our security system, and that's worked really well as well. So for us, it's a case of you know, making sure that we can show the benefits of Kotlin to the dev team on a day-to-day basis and show senior leadership how that manifests itself in time saved and less effort overall. And I think we're getting there. I think there's a general acceptance now that the dev teams are interested in this enough to want to maybe select it as a first choice. I think the next challenge will be from a training perspective. How do we make sure that our dev teams can be productive when they're so busy? We don't always have enough time, even with the sprint gaps, to learn new languages, things like that. So I think that's the biggest challenge we face, really. So we've got, like I say, 30% of our services as a mix, 10% as entire Kotlin, so we've still got like a pretty big base of Java services. I don't think that's going to disappear anytime soon. There's no real need for us to be rewriting everything that we've got in Kotlin. But therein lies the beauty of what we found with Kotlin, really. We don't need to. We can just pick and choose the best bits. We've only looked at this from a backend dev perspective as well. We haven't even delved into how we would look at building our mobile apps in this, or what we can get out of native or anything like that, really. So I don't even know if there's people using that stuff, obviously mobile, but are the other parts of the Kotlin ecosystem widely used? Are they stable? Are they good for production? We've got no idea of that at the moment. So part of what we're doing here is to kind of see what other people are doing. And that's probably where we'll take it next, I think. We'll keep sneaking it into various services where we see fit. And hopefully that will show management teams that there's nothing to really worry about or care about as far as Kotlin's concerned. And at some point, I imagine the balance may start to tip. We may start seeing more and more Kotlin services written right from the start, kind of greenfield projects written in Kotlin, and maybe the balance of Java to Kotlin will kind of tip at some point. But I don't see that happening for a very long time as far as Crunch is concerned. We've got too big a investment in Java at the minute to even think about one day that all disappearing. So that's kind of where we're at with our journey, really. We've arranged another meetup, so hopefully you'll see some value in coming along to that. We're very keen on kind of reaching out and seeing what else is going on. We've got Kubra, who's coming along back end of November to our second meetup. And she's going to talk about what she learned from building kind of major sportsman apps, which is pretty interesting for us because, like I say, most of our mobile apps are either native Java or Swift, or we've got some React Native stuff. So being able to standardise on something for us would be pretty cool. So, like I say, we'd be interested to come along and see what she's going to say. I guess I'd be interested to kind of get a feel for what it is that most of you guys do. I've spoken to a few of you. I know some of you kind of APIs, mobile. Is it generally mobile in the room? Or show of hands, something like that? So pretty heavy. What about the rest of you? Are you kind of Kotlin devs, not Kotlin devs, just interested in it? Are you starting out? Are you veterans? How does it work?
I sit next to the mobile team that are in Kotlin. and I've been on a Kotlin training course, and I attend the weekly Kotlin training that we do
Okay.
at the centre. So I'm just starting out on the Kotlin journey.
Is that an internal course, or is
Yeah, we just doing it internally, informally.
Okay.
Led by Joe.
So Joe teaches it.
Yeah.
W isn't it?
Nice. Okay. Cool. So I guess it's definitely heavily weighted towards kind of mobile at the minute. Do you guys see that across the board? Like you build kind of Kotlin mobile, What about backend? Do you have any kind of devs?
George. Oh, you can dump me in. So we're working HMRC, so the app is out there and it has its pitfalls and its good things. The tax calculator was written in JavaScript and it's like a pure JavaScript. Basically, it's a web view that loads some mad JavaScript in it. It's about 6,000 lines long and it's completely unmaintainable. And new tax year comes around and you never quite know. No testing either, so you just kind of have to manually test it.
You don't have to tell us about
Yeah,
the
you
tax years.
So we were sort of like talking about how we could improve it. So Joe said, well, why didn't I try multi-platform Kotlin? So we've written it in pure Kotlin, and it compiles down to JAWS and iOS, so we can then just import it directly into the app, and then have type safety rather than just passing strings into functions and hoping they were the right thing.
Okay.
So things like that that were going on.
Cool. That sounds like the conversations that we have with our front-end devs.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. So, as far as kind of local Kotlin meetup goes, is there anything that you guys are interested in hearing about? I don't want to put anybody on the spot or anything like that, but post a comment to the meetup page if there's something that you either would be interested in talking about yourselves. We're well up for people who have experiences either like us, which is pretty much start of the journey, pretty much beginner. I guess part of our journey from here is less IntelliJ automatic refactorings and automatic conversions to Kotlin, and moving forward with some more Kotlin, for want of a better phrase. So yeah, anybody who feels like they want to talk, anybody who might want to talk, point them towards the meetup page. But if there's anything that you want to hear about, whether it's stuff like this or more detailed back-end stuff that we might be able to talk about, then post to the meetup page. Other than that, we Crunch get a small discount at the Joker. So they've said that they'd extend that discount to anybody who came to the Brighton Kotlin Meetup. So if anybody wants to file down Joker, then carry on in the pub. That's it.
I just want to say thanks very much for everybody on That's Not Crunch for hosting the event and supplying the pizza and beer. Thank you.
That's all right. No worries. Thank you for coming. I have got some IntelliJ licenses. Okay. Martin here.
Hello.
Do you want a license?
Yes, please. That will be genuinely useful. I deserve applause, but I'll take it.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, I have one.
Your license?
I just need edition.
You sure? Okay. Been here a while. If you guys have one license, then that's fine.
That's you.
I'll take it. See if it's better than others.
Nice one.
Cool. Thanks, guys. If you want to carry on down the Joker, I'll see you down there. I've got to lock up tonight, so I need to make sure everyone's out of the building before I lock up. Otherwise, I'm going to be here a while. But